Week 1 of football is in the books, folks. Here on the Fairfax Sports Report, we've got some special guests tonight. But before we get to that, we want to go right to our underwriters and thank our underwriters for what they do for us here on the Fairfax Sports Report. First off, we want to thank CCI Screen Printing for all your screen printing needs, 703-978-0257. Quality Care Ford Service Center, servicing all makes and models, 703-383-6299. Hey, Glow Pucks and 10-cent beer by your regular host, Greg Wyszynski, who couldn't be with us tonight. I'll do my best, folks, but I can't make any promises. All right, so as you can see here on the wide angle, we've got, of course, myself, BJ Kubaroulis of the Connection Newspapers, Paul Frummelt, also of the Connection Newspapers, and from Chantilly High School, our special guests tonight, Coach Mike Lally and quarterback Nate Warwick. Folks, we've got an interesting show tonight. We're going to talk all about high school football. The first week is in the books. All the scores are in. We're going to talk all about those games. We're going to preview some games. We've got a really special treat for you tonight. But before we get to that treat, as I just show you a little preview of what we're going to be getting to. Right now, our most important and special guests that we do have with us are Coach Mike Lally and Nate Warwick from Chantilly High School. Coach, we just want to start off right off the bat and congratulate you for your success in Week 1, beating Annandale for the second year in a row here in your second season. Welcome to the show, guys. We just want to ask you a couple questions really about Chantilly football. Let's start right off. Coach, you're in your second year of the program. What's different between this year and last year?
Well, I think this year the guys, coming on last year, I came on pretty late in the year. So this year we had some continuity coming in, and the kids knew what to be expected from me and what I expected of them. And, as Nate and I were talking before, they at least have an understanding of the offense better and the defense better, what we want.
A 4-6 season last year, Coach, for the Concord District. That's not a bad finish. I know you guys have struggled in the past before you got there as well. You came in amidst a little bit of controversy. What was that like, taking the team and really bringing them in under your wing to make sure that they knew that you were a guy they could rely on?
Well, I think I was very fortunate. The kids at Chantilly, they're really good kids and hard workers, natural leaders, and a great community. Parents are very supportive, and I had been there as a defensive coordinator, so they didn't know who I was, and we all just kind of bonded together in the face of the turmoil and just kind of moved on.
Now, Coach, talking with you earlier before the season started, you mentioned that teams such as Centerville, Westfield, they've had coaches for 5-10 years, and they have this sense of they have this confidence in their coaching staff, confidence that they will be able to win on the football field. And with this, with Annandale, we assume is going to be a pretty good team. With this win, does that give your kids confidence for the rest of the season?
Well, I hope it does. It's important that they understand that they were able to beat Annandale last year and this year, and they're a perennial playoff team, so that they can look at themselves as a playoff caliber type team. So when they are going against what are considered to be the bigger teams in our district, that we're not intimidated by them, that we feel that we can compete with them. And that's our goal every week, is to be competitive and compete.
Now, Nate, what is the feeling in the locker room after the win?
Obviously, it's always good after you win.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a little bit more low-key this year, considering our first win in a couple of years was last year. It's always great. I played basketball too, but the best feeling in the world is after a football win on the bus with the guys. So.
And you mentioned you guys broke an 11-game losing streak last year in Coach Lally's opener against Annandale. You beat them 10-0, and again beat them again this year. You went through that season though of difficulty, 0-10. What was that like, and what has changed since then?
The season was hard. I mean, once those losses start piling up, it becomes even more harder to win. But this year, it's different. And last year, we have more ball control offense. Especially this year, everyone's more comfortable. They know what they're doing, and we have high expectations this year.
Nate, as a junior, you threw for roughly 600 yards, and you could also run the ball as well. Talk a little bit about what you expect to bring to the team this year. It looks like you guys are ready to take a step forward, and it looks like the Concord has evened out a little bit too, and you guys might have a shot here. Talk a little bit about what it's like in the locker room. What's the sentiment amongst your teammates? What are you guys ready to do this year?
We're ready to obviously we don't want to look ahead to any games. We just go week by week, prepare for each team. We obviously want to have a winning season, but I'm looking to bring just obviously passing and running, but also a little bit more leadership this year. Last year I was a little soft-spoken, but this year I'm trying to lead in practice and on the field to make everyone more comfortable.
Now, Coach, let's talk about the Annandale game specifically. 7-6 game, a bunch of key turnovers, 2 blocked field goals. Talk about the defense and what they did this week.
Well, I think the defense, I mean, they worked hard. We had a good game plan, and they executed it well. The thing that we really focus on, one of the things we always focus on is getting 11 guys to the ball and hitting and wrapping them up. And with a player like Carnajela, the quarterback from Landville, excuse me, he takes a lot of guys to get them down. And they did a really good job, and we got some good hits on them, and the ball came free. And that's why we were able to get some turnovers.
And I saw Nathan Cartagena, that quarterback from Annandale last year, play against Oakton 2 times in a row. They played him, if you guys remember, in the closer of the season and the first week of the playoffs. So you guys beat a legitimate team last year, a playoff team last year in the opener. You did it again in the opener, and you guys finished 4-6 last year. It's difficult to see those teams go on and play somebody else in the Concord when you feel you've already done that. How difficult is it in the Concord district to win? It's a difficult meat grinder, as it's been described to me in the past, Coach. What's the sentiment like when you talk to other coaches? Is Chantilly ready to step up to that upper echelon?
All coaches in the district are always, they're also good coaches, that they're always respectful of every team. They never look over anybody. So, whether it's Coach Skinner, Coach Verbanek, they're always, they'll say, oh, you're looking better, and this and that. But, they respect us when we were 0-10, and they respect us now. So it's a tough Concord, or tough district. We'll never be able to just walk through it. It's one of those things that every team's always going to be good and coming at you.
Now, Nate, this is your senior year and your first year with the same head coach. I mean, Coach Lai took over last year, and he's here again. You're in your senior year. Talk a little bit about finally having the same coach for 2 years in a row.
Just like I said before, the comfort level is great to have. I know the offense like the back of my hand now. Basically, just with the steps and the option, we run more of an option type game, and I don't have to worry about anything on the field, really. Just go out and play, try my best.
Now, talk a little bit about that offense and that drive, that touchdown drive that you guys had. Started on the 45. What were some of the key plays you think in that game?
Probably first had to start off with the screen pass on 3rd down to our running back, AJ. Went about 20 yards. And then we had a rollout pass that I threw to Danny Sims, our tight end. Got us down to the 2-yard line. And we called an option play, and I just kept it and scored from 2 yards out.
And guys, looking at Nathan Warwick here on the screen, I mean, you can see he's a fairly larger kid at quarterback, which is good to have, Coach, and you can work him into the system and getting him to see some of those targets as well on the field. Talk a little bit about some of his targets and some guys surrounding him that have really stepped up for you guys this year, and some guys you expect some big things out of.
Well, two key guys as far as receiving the ball would be Danny Sims, our tight end, and he's a big kid. He's 6'3" and 230. He was an all-district tight end last year, and then our other leading receiver coming back from last year is Austin Morris. He was he was an all-district free safety, but he was our leading receiver, or tied for lead receiving last year. And those are 2 guys that we rely on heavily for catching the ball and making big plays for us. Austin also plays running back for us, so he does a variety of things for us.
And Nate, you did punch in that touchdown in the Annandale game as well, and you guys blocked the extra point there to keep the victory. You also hit Danny for 35 yards on 4 passes, and you completed 8 of 15 for 69 yards, and you also rushed 6 times for 14 yards and that touchdown. So I guess playing against an Annandale defense, some things probably were shifted up. You guys probably changed some things. They are known for their defense more. What can we really look for? And Coach, you can chime in on this as well. What are we going to look for out of Nate this year? More pass, more run? What are you guys really slated to do with the weapons that you do have?
I'll go first to help him out. We hope to keep it fairly balanced. We look to run the ball 60% of the time and pass about 40. In fact, on our play selection, we ended up throwing the ball 1/3 of the time this past weekend. So that's what we try to get, somewhere in that time ratio. For Nate, the way our option's set up, he's going to run the ball a fair amount, but he'll also pitch it a fair amount. So we look for him just to keep executing it. The main thing from Nate is in our system, the quarterback is pretty much the facilitator of the offense, making the decisions, and whether to pitch it or who to throw to or to keep it and run, which he did a couple of times this weekend, and it's really helped us out with him having a year experience and being more comfortable in the system, so we don't have to coach him up near as much.
And we were talking before the show, you guys played on Monday of this week due to rain. So coming off a little bit of rest, Coach, I know you're probably resting the guys and going a little bit lighter in practice, but you do have a game coming up against Lake Braddock. Talk a little bit about that game. What do you expect to see on the other side of that football?
Lake Braddock's a big physical team. They last year their running back ran for about 1,600 yards, I believe. So they're a real physical team. We had a tough game with them last year. We unfortunately lost. It was 14-6. But we know that they're going to come after us ready to go, and because they have expectation of winning their district, and we have expectations of getting to the playoffs. So our goal is to beat them, and their goal is to beat us. But it's going to be a big physical battle.
So, Coach, Lake Braddock, obviously, another team that just 2 years ago was 0-10. Now you have a short schedule preparing for them. What is practice going to be like up until Friday?
Well, we really yesterday, the day after the game, was really more of a real light practice, a lot of walk-through, mental stuff. We watched a lot of video. And then today was a little bit more physical. But tomorrow will be pretty light. It's mostly mental again because we have to be ready on Friday. So real light day tomorrow.
Nate, what are your aspirations as an athlete? What are you looking to do? Are you looking to play at the next level?
Yes. I've been contacted by several schools, really. I really want to play football next level. It doesn't matter what division. A couple schools that are looking at me are Toledo and Akron. And I don't know, we'll just see how I do this year. Main goal is for the team to win and to get to the playoffs. And the individual stuff will come later.
He's a good politician, folks. Absolutely. Coach Lolly's got him really learning some team unity over there, and that's what we like to see at Chantilly. We wish you guys both the best of luck, and we'll see you down the road here during the Northern Region football playoffs, Coach, as you did mention. So good luck, and we'll see you guys down the road. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
All right, folks, we're going to head to commercial now for just a minute. We're going to come on back, and like I said before, you don't want to go anywhere. We've got some really crazy stuff here for the Northern Region. As I did show you before, you're really going to enjoy coming back and watching what we do have set up for you. So come on back and join us here on the Fairfax Sports Network. Hey, welcome back to the Fairfax Sports Report. We want to first off thank Coach Mike Lolly and Chantilly quarterback Nate Warwick for joining us here on the Fairfax Sports Report. Guys, I think they did a great job and definitely gave us some insight into that program. I'm joined, of course, by Paul Frummelt as well as Mirza Krispahich meeting us on set here, also of the Connection newspapers. I promise I'll get that right. As you can tell, folks, I'm not your regular host here. Greg Wyszynski is not with us tonight, so I'll be sitting in. I can't make any promises like I said before. So, Mirza Krispahich, welcome to the Fairfax Sports Report.
Thanks, it's good to be here.
So, Mirza, you did have an interesting day today. You went to the Northern Region Council meeting at Marshall High School. Tell us a little bit about what you learned today about the region and what are some of the things they discussed at that regional meeting.
That's right. Well, it's one of the first meetings of the year, of course, and they're still trying to work things out. That there are a couple of issues that are not completely have been talked about at the meetings yet. So they're hesitant to vote on them or what have you. But there's a couple of interesting items coming out of it. One of them is how the National District is going to seed their teams prior to playoffs now, given Loudoun Valley and its status, because it doesn't play regular season games against National District opponents. So far, Loudoun Valley has been seeded as the number 8 seed. But Loudoun Valley, being a pretty large school, is they have some decent teams, and if they're seeded as the number 8 seed and they end up playing the 1 or the 2 seed, sometimes their seasons end too early.
And right, it's not fair for an 8 seed to come in and blow away a 1 seed that has just put in all this work to get to a number 1 seed. I mean, it really makes the regular season for that team kind of irrelevant. And to bring a Valley team in from Loudoun County, which they won't be with us again next year. This will be their last year in this cycle before they make a move to the Northwest region. It's unfair for the other teams in that district.
Well, you bring up two interesting points there. The first thing, like you said, is it fair or unfair? And what they're going to do is something that they're still trying to work. It did actually get approved, but they're still, trying to understand how this is going to work.
Right.
Because essentially, Loudoun Valley is going to come in as a number 5 seed, but it's not a true number 5. Well, they're going to end up playing the number 4 seed. It's an 8-team district.
Okay.
When Loudoun Valley comes in, they will play the number 4 seed in the first round of the playoffs. But then the brackets play out differently than they usually do. The winner of that game won't play the number 1 seed. And so we're yet to see how this is exactly going to work out. And once we have the brackets in front of us, it'll be easier to understand everything. The other point that you brought up is Loudoun Valley, coming from far out. And what they wanted to do was cut down on the financial costs of playing the games, of them traveling.
Right.
They used to have to play, 1 or 2 games prior to district tournaments. And this is going to cut it down to just 3 rounds of the district tournament and cut down on financial costs of teams traveling out or Loudoun Valley coming into the district.
And it's interesting that, they're going to protect their number 1 seeds, as I believe they should. I mean, you have to protect the number 1 seed. In fact, let's talk a little bit about volleyball last year. Valley was such an incredible volleyball team. They came in and just almost blew away the rest of the tournament. I mean, they took out the number 1 seed from the beginning. So a little bit unfair for a number 1 seed in that district. So I'm glad to see that the Northern Region Council has tried to remedy that situation. We'll see how those new brackets play out this year.
That is exactly what the representatives from the National District did say, was that they're trying to protect their number 1 seed and that they're trying to protect them into not only in the district tournament, but to have them go on to the regional tournament for sure, which I'm not exactly sure if that was the point up until now, but they're definitely making that to be a point. And the big thing about this is they're only doing this for a year.
Right.
And even they're wondering, should we be doing this, getting so much into this and grinding it out if it's only for a year. But I'm glad to see it because while it's only a year for us or for them, there's kids who are seniors on those teams who, this is not only a year for them, this is their year, the year.
And you make an interesting point, but you also have to think about there's always redistricting and reclassification going on in this region. Stonebridge is a good, example, Loudoun Valley as well. So to set a bit of a precedent right now to show what could happen in the future if a team was to come back in, a team that was unwanted like a Valley, to set a precedent for what they could do in the future with some of those brackets is a good thing to have that precedent set. Anything else that kind of struck a chord at the meeting? Anything else that they discussed that was worth mentioning?
The directors of student activities and the principals did spend some time talking about tournament workers, people who are hired to run, to run the ticket sales and so on and so forth, and their wages, how much they're going to be paid, and should they increase their wages to cover the taxes? Because there have been some issues with the IRS coming in and saying, you have to do the proper paperwork, the proper payrolls to get these people in. And now, there's a couple of proposals of how to control this. And one of them is to go through the VHSL, which would cost an enormous amount of money.
Right.
The other one is to go through the schools and then have the schools reimbursed. But then the money comes down to the schools. So they're going back and forth on this, and it's a pretty interesting issue that I think will come up within the next month or two, and it's going to be a big deal.
And you'll learn that always going through the VHSL is going to cost you a lot of money. What didn't cost any money, though, Paul Frummelt, is a story that you wrote this year and this week about a new rule this year, I should say, that has been implemented to all VHSL Virginia High School League schools. Paul, tell us a little bit about that story and tell us really how you ran into that story.
Well, I went to Centerville, the Wildcats, opening night, and they were playing Woodson at Woodson. And first play from scrimmage, they had an 80-yard run. So and then 3 plays later, they got another touchdown. So they were obviously a better team than Woodson. And by halftime, the score was 43-0. And what I noticed during the second half, Centerville took out their second team, and the clock seemed to continue to run. It refused to stop running. I was looking at it, and the crowd was saying, "Hey, clock's running," and guys in the booth like, "We know." And I looked into it after the game, and apparently there's a new mercy rule in effect for all classifications, single A, double A, all divisions in the VHSL. Is if a team is winning by more than 35 points in the second half, if the point differential is 35 points or more, the clock will continue to run. If a runner runs out of bounds or there's an incomplete pass, the clock will continue to run. Clock will stop for timeouts and then start again at the ready-to-play signal. So basically what this is to help get the game over faster. And by not just stopping the game, but helping to get the game over faster because these these teams are getting blown out.
And blowouts are something that we usually see in the first couple of weeks before the district schedules start. Most teams are more prepared for their district games. They know what they're getting into. The blowouts are usually in the couple beginning weeks of the season here, as we have wrapped up week 1. Centerville did roll through Woodson, but as you did mention, Coach Skinner, in your story, you mentioned Coach Skinner had a quote as saying, "I never run up the score. I don't need this rule to tell me how to be a sportsman." Basically, I'm paraphrasing his quote here, but he did say verbatim, "If I ran up the score, I'd be fired."
Yeah.
And a lot of coaches feel that way. So basically, Paul, why is it that Dennis Hall, a guy that you spoke with that runs the refereeing league, mentioned that this was a needed rule? Why do they need this rule?
Well, Dennis Hall, commissioner of the Northern Virginia Football Officials Association, told me that they felt like some coaches, it's not like they didn't trust the coaches, but as Dennis Hall said, some teams could have, Centerville could have their 4th team in, and they'd still be, that wasn't the case. Woodson was actually doing very well against Centerville's 2nd team. But at some point, these teams it's so lopsided that they want to get the game over. That's what, it's not that they didn't trust the coaches, he said, but I have my suspicions otherwise, but
We've seen some lopsided scores here over the last week and also last year in the opening weeks. And, from my perspective, and I'll play devil's advocate, it's got to be good for some of these teams that do get pounded into submission, even though the 3rd or 4th string, quarterback's in for the other team. So, if I'm a parent of a student on a team that, like a Woodson, that would suffer playing against a Division VI team, why should I think that this isn't a good rule?
Well, it's most definitely not a good rule, because Woodson wanted to continue to play. Coach Taylor told me after in the second half, the refs came up and told him, "This is what we're doing. The clock can continue to run." And Coach Taylor said, "Well, is this optional? Can I say I don't want it?" These kids practice, brutally throughout the week to play these games, and they have, that the second half lasted, almost 30 minutes. It was so quick. It was over in the blink of an eye. And these Woodson kids were they were still playing. They were playing hard. They were driving on Centerville's 2nd team defense, and it looked like they were having fun. Lawrence Noss, the Woodson running back, was still running hard. Gabe Thomas, the Woodson quarterback, freshman quarterback, and you see a freshman. This is his first game at high school, and he deserves to have the entire time to play. They were losing. They were not going to win the game, but that doesn't mean you stop the game. That doesn't mean you hurry up the game, because sometimes that game was over, but it really was on the scoreboard. It was over, but it really wasn't over on the field.
And an interesting point that you made in your story, Paul, was that some of the Centerville kids too. Obviously, they're getting their shot to play in the second half. Those second stringers want to get their opportunity to have some more time on the field. Mirza, you had something to add to this as well.
Right. Well, I have to take Paul's side on this, and I'm not saying that you're representing your own side. Like you said, you're playing devil's advocate, but Woodson is a young team. You just mentioned the freshman quarterback. I know I've been talking to Coach Taylor earlier before the season. They have a couple of sophomores running the show on the offense. This is a young team, and the only way they're not going to be a young team is if they keep playing. And if you take away a half from them or a quarter from them, that's taking away a quarter of experience, even if it's in a way bad experience. I mean, you're losing by a lot. But experience is experience, and you can't substitute experience for anything, any kind of practice or anything. So
you cannot simulate game time experience.
That's what Taylor said. And another thing, and Skinner was not too happy about this rule, because he has his second team. That a lot of those people are good enough to start on any other team in the Northern region, and they finally get their playing time in the second half. And since Woodson's first team offense was driving on Centerville's second team defense, I mean, it took up most of the clock. Centerville had about nine snaps. Centerville's second team offense had 9 snaps, and most of those were incomplete passes or short running gains, and then they punted it away. So I just feel like it's forcing these kids to stop the game, forcing these coaches into sportsmanship. I feel it's saying I believe that it's saying they do not trust the coaches. They think these coaches are going to run up the score, and some coaches have been sanctioned in Virginia for running up the score. But I believe if coaches run up the score, they don't deserve to be coaching these young kids.
And folks at home, if you do want to read Paul Frummelt's story on the ConnectionNewspapers.com, you can also do that. You can pick up also a copy of the Connection anywhere if you'd like to really read that story in depth and get a good idea of what that rule will entail. There's some intricacies with that rule that you'd really want to look at. Well-written story, Paul. Before we get on to some impossible trivia, we want to mention that we do have something very special coming up, a bit of a preview. Like I said, stick around with us, folks. We're going to get to it. We're going to tell you how you can also win your free copy of Madden 07. We'll get to that as well. Stay tuned, folks. Let's do a little impossible trivia now, guys. I know this is always a fun moment in the show for all of us
I
to
always get it right.
try to stump each other a little bit as we get through that. But our first impossible trivia question was, when was the last time that the Northern Region did not have a representative in the Division VI AAA state tournament?
Let's see. Oakton, Centerville, Westfield.
When was the last time that the Northern Region did not have a representative in the Division VI AAA state tournament final?
1904.
Well, the last time that a Northern Region team did not make it to the finals was in 1999 when C.D. Hilton beat Verina just by a point, 28-27. Since 2000, the Northern Region has been represented in every state title game and has won 4 of the last 6 state titles. Oakton, of course, won it last year. Then you have Westfield in 03, Robinson in 2001, and Centerville again in 2000. So the Northern Region, Division VI-wise, has really represented itself well on the state stage. And I think we have a couple of teams this year out of this next district that we're going to talk about that could probably make another run at it. You see, obviously, those are all Concord
Definitely.
teams. So with that, let's move on to the Concord district, guys. And we had some results from this week. We've obviously already talked about the Chantilly victory, 7-6 over Annandale. Quarterback Nate Warwick led his team with a touchdown, 7-6 victory. The defense, though, forced 6 turnovers. 4 of them they recovered, and they blocked 2 kicks. So great job by the Chantilly defense. At this point, let's look at the current standings in the Concord. As we did mention, Chantilly, one of 5 Concord teams to play. Robinson defeated Fairfax and went to 1-0 in the district, 1-0 overall. You see Westfield, Centerville, Chantilly all get victories there out of district.
Pretty much what we expected in the Concord district.
And Fairfax, of course, down there at the bottom with their 21-6 loss coming against the Robinson Rams, who struggled at first, but then turned that around. Paul, you did mention that you were at the Centerville game. A lot of people have this team pegged to be a state title contender. Obviously, they played an opponent in Woodson that had a little bit of trouble sticking with them. Do you think that'll be the case for all the teams they play this year?
Well, Woodson is a growing team, and as Coach Skinner said, we just had more speed than them. I mean, Brandon Davis, 4 touchdowns. Van Schu, 3 touchdown passes. They were just, talent-wise, the speed, they were just a better team. And Skinner told me, if we're still undefeated in Week 9, then we can talk. But Skinner wanted nothing to talk about, how good this team is. Obviously, we think this team is pretty good, and they showed that they have that offensive firepower with a 43-0 win over Woodson.
And Mirza, your Woodson team over there, I know they've had better days. What do you see out of them that you might think could help to mean good things for them in the Liberty District?
I think, like we talked about last week a little bit, Woodson does have a very tough out-of-district schedule. And, for them to be entering the district in Week 4 after having played these high-powered teams such as Centerville, for them, that's going to be a difficult season as far as this season goes. I think the most important thing for them is the experience to gain that. 'Cause like we said, freshman quarterback, a few sophomores on the offensive side. But of course, next week coming up for them is a huge rivalry game where they play Fairfax at home, and that's it doesn't get better than that. As far as having 2 teams from the same city, crosstown rivals, it's going to be a great game, I think. And I think these kids just want to get out there and play, and somewhere down the line it's going to break for them. They're going to win 1 or 2.
A lot of rivalry games coming up this week, folks, and we're going to get to preview a bunch of those for you. Stick with us here on the Fairfax Sports Report. Staying in Fairfax, though, Mirza, Robinson defeated Fairfax 21-6 this week. Talk a little bit about those Rams. They struggled at first in the beginning of that game, but looked like they pulled out a pretty easy victory, though, through the rest of it.
Right, well, the first quarter I wasn't at the game myself, but the first quarter did go without a score, 0-0, which is a big surprise given that last year Robinson rolled over Fairfax 61-0. And at that time, they didn't have the mercy rule. So maybe that's something to bring up, too. But an unbelievable performance by Mike Meyer, the running back at Robinson. with all 3 touchdowns for Robinson, one pass caught for a touchdown, and 2 touchdown runs to turn the game over for Robinson, 21-6. You know, Fairfax is a better team than last year, so 61-0, 21-6. That doesn't give you the right measure to see how good Robinson is this year. You know, Fairfax did improve tremendously, but you know, Robinson, a win is a win, and I think that's what Coach Bendorf is going to be emphasizing.
And obviously, a win being a win, you've got Westfield getting their first win of the year. This is a team that's a little bit of an anomaly to us right now. Their Evan Royster list, oh my gosh, that's 90 touchdowns, folks. What do we do without an Evan Royster? Well, Mike Glennon steps up and throws for 3 touchdown passes against, you know, granted Hayfield in a 34-7 victory, but still Glennon showing that he can get it done himself.
Well, again, it's just like the Centerville game. You know, you don't really know. It wasn't a good enough barometer of how good this team is, but it did show that Glennon can control that offense. He can, you know, connect with receivers, and it shows that he is ready to lead that team. And I believe that Westfield proved that, you know, their offense does work, and that's really all we need to see.
Folks, we've talked about most of the Concord teams, and we've got one more Concord team that we do want to discuss with you, and that is Oakton High School. We've got a special treat for you tonight here on the Fairfax Sports Network. Oakton will be playing against Madison in the upcoming Outback Bowl, a crosstown rivalry game against these 2 heated rivals. We want to give you a quick preview of what that game should look like, or what we think it might look like. We've got an interesting setup for you here on PlayStation 2 with Madden 07. I'm sure it's a very popular game out there for all you high school kids. Well, we've got a special treat for you. We've got Oakton playing Madison in Madden, and we want to throw that up there for you and show you what we think this game will look like. The game is, of course, going to be between Oakton and Madison, the Oakton Cougars and Madison Warhawks. This game was a difficult game for the Warhawks last year as they dropped the game 34-7. It's one of only a couple of games in the last 8 years that has not been close. You see the Warhawk there on the field, and you see the Warhawk offense taking the field. Hey, there's quarterback Kevin Healy. He's going to be new this year, taking over for Warren Anderson, making one of his first starts. As Warren Anderson got hurt last year, he got some mop-up duty, and you'll see Healy here be able to control his offense, and he's going to take the snap. Hey, there's Renier Bravo. Bravo was the only Warhawk to score in this rivalry game last year. Bravo is going to be carrying the ball for the Warhawks, and you'll be seeing a lot out of the Warhawks, a lot of run out of the Warhawks this year, especially with Bravo. If you look to the right there's Aaron Lambert, a receiver that Healy's definitely going to be relying on. Little play action here, but hey, there's Jason Risley's Oakton defense. Coach Risley is Riley is the defensive coordinator over there for Joe Thompson's Oakton Cougars, as we see Stephen Pruneris, the Oakton quarterback, and his receiver, Jared Green, Irvin Garner to the left, and Wolo in the backfield. You see Pruneris gets hit there on the throw. The drop by the defensive back there for Madison, just not something they usually do. So watch out for Madison's defense. Again, there's Garner, a senior, as well as Green on the right, and Wolo in the backfield. A little play action. Here's Garner, guys. This is what he does. You think he dropped it. He didn't drop it. Garner's a playmaker. That's what he did for the Cougars last year. They didn't really throw the ball very much, as they had a Keith Payne running back centered offense. But you see Pruneris here also starting one of his first games, and Wolo there in the backfield with the green arrow, also going to be starting at running back. Big shoes to fill for Keith Payne, but you see there on that little play, he gets some good blocking up front, and that's what Oakton has always been used to. Great blocking. You get the horses up front. It's something all these coaches talk about in the Concord district. You got to have the guys up front. So what we saw there was 2 new starting quarterbacks, guys. It's got to be nerve-wracking for these young guys to be, well, seniors now, but taking over their first varsity snap as a starter in their senior years, guys.
Especially going, Paul, especially going into the rivalry game in Vienna, the Outback Bowl, as you said. I mean, for you to be playing your first game in that kind of atmosphere, you know, I can imagine the stands are going to be pretty filled out there, and it adds a little bit of pressure, but you know, the coaches have probably prepared these guys for that kind of stuff.
Now, you saw Garner and Green out there when you had your quarterback take a look to the right and the left. Those guys are going to be key for Oakton because they don't have Keith Payne anymore. And by the way, that was some very nice Madden playing.
Thank you, Paul. We'll have to square off, actually, by the way. Folks, if you stick with us, that's what we're going to be having every week for our Game of the Week preview. The Fairfax Sports Network will be doing the Oakton-Madison game as their Game of the Week, so stay tuned for that next week. We'll give you some information as to how to get times and dates for when that will be playing. You can also go to our website, www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com, to find out when that will be playing. But Oakton-Madison, just one of those rivalry games that's going to be going on this week, and we'll try to give you some more of that Madden-type preview every week for our Fairfax Sports Network Game of the Week. Also, we're going to tell you later on in the season, if you stick with us, just how you can win your free copy of Madden 2007. I promise you it's an incredible game, folks. Okay, so moving on now, guys, to another rivalry game between a Concord and Liberty team. You've got Herndon, the team that we have ranked atop our, well, almost atop of our Connection Top 10 poll, playing a South Lakes team. Herndon is a team under Coach Tommy Meyer, 17-year veteran. They've got all these guys coming back, all these playmakers, Chris Thompson at running back, Zay Lopez at quarterback, Matt Seeger as a receiver. You've got so many guys that are going to be working in that offense that are coming back as seniors that I think they'll be giving South Lakes fits, although South Lakes has now changed their offense where they're going to be really spreading it out a little bit more. They've got a guy in A.J. Price that's a transfer that's just come in that's really there to play basketball, but he's 6'4". Amir Gabriel, quarterback over there, is going to be really looking for that big target on the field. Obviously, it's going to be a tough draw for South Lakes at home, but I believe Herndon has all the weapons to make this their Barron Cameron Bowl.
Well, South Lakes, I mean, their offense can do what it wants to, but you can't stop Herndon's offense. You mentioned quarterback Zay Lopez. I mean, we've talked about it last week. We've written about it. Their offense is loaded, and there's not much that South Lakes will be able to do.
And let's get to our Connection Top 10 poll here on the Fairfax Sports Network. We've actually brought our Top 10 poll here to the show, and you can see we've got two teams tied for the 10 slot down there, Langley and Oakton. Oakton, the former state champ, lost 31 seniors, so if they can beat Madison, they're at number 7 this week. It looks like they could possibly move up in that poll. You see the number of votes that each team got there in the second column and what they were ranked last week. Also there in the final column, but Annandale dropped a little bit from number 4 last week as they did lose that game to Chantilly. And you see Westfield there defeating Hayfield. They moved up a spot with 22 votes. Robinson, you never bet against them, even though they've got a tough year ahead of them, although they didn't show it in the opening week with the Meyer boys there running an incredible offense. And hey, West Springfield moves up a slot and hasn't even played a game. I like to see that. That's beautiful. Peter Lalich over there, one of those guys that's definitely one to watch. And of course, we've talked about Herndon, Stonebridge, a team that raked in 36 votes, still at second place from last week. And of course, you've got your Mike Skinner Wildcats up top of the Connection newspaper's top 10 poll guy. Who moves next week?
Well, you see Centerville, Robinson, Westfield, Oakton. There's going to be maybe not next week, but some of those Concord teams are going to have to drop off, and I'm not sure. I'd like to see Chantilly up there. Obviously, it's for Coach Lally watching, but no, it's the Concord is too stacked in having that many Concord teams on their top 10.
Right.
Some are going to fall.
And that's, with PowerPoints and the way those things play out over the year, you see those guys constantly the same usual suspects always up there. Mirza, you got a West Springfield team in your area of coverage that you cover with Peter Lalich taking on a Stonebridge in the upcoming weeks here. Well, actually this Friday. What do we expect to see out of West Springfield playing our number 2 ranked team? We've got 2 ranked teams in our top 10 poll playing each other.
That's right. Number 2 and number 4, I believe, in our poll, West Springfield and Stonebridge playing each other at Stonebridge. Last year Stonebridge pretty much dominated West Springfield in their opening game of the season. But talking to the coaches over at West Springfield, if they believe if they can stay healthy this year, like I mentioned this last week again, A.J. Johnson coming back as a running back. He didn't have a great season last year because he missed a lot of it through injury. If he can stay healthy and he can open up things for Lalich, the passing game, through his running, I think West Springfield is going to be a very formidable opponent to Stonebridge, and I'm looking forward to seeing that game. That's going to be a very interesting game. And
as someone who covers Stonebridge, obviously, Stonebridge hasn't had a game yet, so they still have those question marks, that linebacker core. Will Devin Brown be as good as advertised? And West Springfield could give Stonebridge a run for their money. I wouldn't be surprised if Stonebridge does drop and West Springfield takes their place.
It's definitely an interesting game that most people are really looking forward to seeing. I think it's going to be a statement for really who's going to be the Division V big dog, and Stonebridge, a Liberty District team, as we transition over to our Liberty District to take a look, first of all, at some impossible trivia. Let's get to some Liberty District impossible trivia,
So
folks. It's impossible. Not counting the 2005 season when Stonebridge was obviously there. When was the last time the Northern Region had a representative in the Division V AAA state title game? The last time a Division V team went to the state title game.
I honestly do not know.
And that's why it's impossible.
By goodness, it's impossible.
I'll tell you the answer, folks. It's 1993, and you would never guess who by the way they've played over the last couple years, and it's no slight to them, but they've definitely had some shifting over there at Langley High School.
Yeah.
Langley was the last team to be a Division V representative in 1993. They dropped a 19-0 shutout to IC Norcom. So good to see that our Liberty teams are now moving in the right direction. Like to see one of them get to that level, and Stonebridge obviously got there last year. Speaking of the Liberty District and Stonebridge, let's look at the current standings. Not many teams from the Liberty played this week, so our standings aren't going to be much different than they were last week, but Marshall gets a victory over Washington and Lee to move to 1-0 overall. Hey, look at that, Marshall fans. Marshall at the top of the Liberty District. Incredible, incredible. And you've got, of course, Woodson with their loss to Centerville down there at the bottom, but a lot of teams slated to play this week. It's going to be an interesting week for Liberty District football. Let's move on to Langley versus Lee. Langley is an interesting team, guys. I know I just knocked them a little bit for being the last team to be in the state tournament. God forbid. Good for them. They were there, and I think under Coach John Howerton now their system is just starting to take effect here in the fourth year. Howerton's got some big kids up front, and Marshall Moore is going to help open some gaps for fullbacks like Justin Hurley and a tailback like my man Josh Siegel, who rushed for over 1,000 yards in less than 7 games last year for the Saxons. You've got Graham DeBow at quarterback. They've got some offensive weapons. I think the question for Langley will be, how will their defense hold up against this speedy Lee attack? Mirza, you've spoken very highly of Lee, and you think they could really give Langley a run.
Right. Lee just played in their first game of the season last week against Edison, a very good Edison team that Coach Lewis ended up talking down a lot in the preseason,
Right.
probably to get his players a little more incentive to play hard. But Lee came out and lost the game. Basically came down to the last drive of the game before they lost it. It was 27-22. But they looked very good, especially with rushing the ball, with the quarterback option plays coming from the new quarterback, Chris Utterson, who rushed for over 160 yards as a quarterback. I mean, that's pretty high, and they added another over 100 yards from Brandon Cameron, their high-power running back. So, I mean, if Langley's really going to have to find a way to contain this Lee offense, that Edison couldn't figure out a way to do it. And, Lee kept running the same play over and over again, and Edison could not figure out how to stop Chris Utterson from doing this option play where, he basically faked everybody out on the field, including myself out in the bleachers. So.
And be sure that Langley coach Howerton, John Howerton, has that tape in his office right now, and he's breaking down that play to see what they can do with their big kids up front to see if they can stop that type of run. You don't want to see a guy run the same play over and over. I mean, you've got to be able to stop it, obviously. So I know that was a tight game between Edison and Lee this past week. Let's get to another Liberty District team. Briefly, we'll talk about McLean taking on South County, only because it's really an enigma. We're not really sure what to do with it. McLean, I think, still has a lot of question marks, but quarterback John Shola's got a strong arm, and I think he's going to relish in the moment to take over an offense that he's had to wait and split time with other quarterbacks last year. But they're playing an interesting team in South County, Mirza, and I hear really good rumblings about Pete Bendorf's Stallions. What have you heard?
Yeah, like you said, it's been just really good word coming out of that camp, all preseason long. And it's not coming from them, it's coming from people around them,
right.
From other schools that have played and from schools who have, went out to their scrimmages to watch them play. They like what they're seeing over there, and I was out of their practice, and I really like what I was seeing over there. And I think for this game, South County is really itching to show how much they have improved over the last year. And, McLean graduate, I'm hoping for the best, but, McLean's really going to have to play its top game against South County to get a score like they did last year. So.
And I think a lot of people would look at us and say, second-year program won one game last year. How could they not, how could they beat McLean? I think that McLean has still, like we said, some question marks to answer. If anything, they'll prove to themselves that they're a formidable team if they do take out a South County team with a back like Titus Pennington, who's just been incredible so far in the preseason over there at South County. I think if McLean proves themselves against this team, I think it's going to help build confidence for those guys. They blew them out by more than 30 points last year, but that was a brand new team in their brand new first game. So we'll see how this one plays out.
And you just mentioned Pennington as the running back at South County. He really came on strong at the end of the year last year. I think he had some trouble maybe adjusting to the new school. He was only a sophomore last year, this year a junior. And, most of his yards from last year came in the last 4 games. And I think he's really itching to get back out there and, keep it rolling. So.
And you like to see a guy like that, a young guy, build momentum and take it into the next season. That's always what you look for when you're looking at young guys in new programs. They always want to build momentum to carry that program. Of course, the biggest momentum there is a guy by the name of Pete Bendorf. He's going to keep that rolling, and he does a great job. Obviously, Bendorf has done a lot in this area, and to see him building a program to where we think in their second year they have a chance to win their opener against a pretty good McLean team, I think that speaks volumes about what type of coaching they do and that they're lucky to have there at South County. Anyway, let's move on to the Patriot District. Really more interesting than it's been over the last couple years. Here you see the district standings for the Patriot District. T.C. Williams won their first game, 1-0. Overall are those Titans, and we hope you'll remember them. Lake Braddock, West Springfield, West Potomac, South County, those teams have not played yet, so they're going to stay there towards the middle of the district. And then you'll see your Annandale, your Lee, and your Hayfield there at the bottom. All those teams played some formidable opponents. Annandale, of course, we've talked about their close loss to Chantilly. Lee dropped to Edison, and Hayfield a 34-7 loss to Mike Glennon and the Westfield Bulldogs guys. I really believe that this is one of those districts that's going to be more interesting than it's been in the past. Of course, we've talked about our West Springfield team that's ranked up there. Who's a team that surprises you, Paul, that you think might actually prove themselves a little bit worthy in that district and maybe a playoff spot if they get those power points from some of those tougher teams?
Well, you see those 3 bottom-rung teams. That's not indicative of how it will shake down later on. I mean, I still think Annandale is a strong team. They were surprised by Chantilly, definitely, and I believe Annandale should, again, get that playoff spot.
Here's just a district that you cover a bunch of teams. Who's a team that you think's got a great shot out of the Patriot?
Well, we obviously talked about West Springfield earlier on, and I think, there's a lot of talk about them. You never want to count out Annandale, as you were saying. Last year Chantilly stunned Annandale in the beginning, and Annandale went on and became a playoff team. You're looking at West Springfield. You're looking at Lake Braddock. You never know with Lake Braddock. Right. They're big guys. They're strong. They're ready to go out there. They're all, a big school. Always have a lot of talent, especially with Jordan Russell returning as a running back there. And watching Lee play, I mean, they're going to knock off some teams and make some impressive results, I think, over the days. But I think West Springfield probably the top dog in that district at this point.
Cream of the crop in the Patriot District is West Springfield, folks, according to Mirza Krispahich. You heard it here first from the Connection newspapers. Again, you're watching the Fairfax Sports Network's Fairfax Sports Report, a weekly show where we bring you the best of the Northern region. We're talking about high school football here with B.J. Kubaroulis, Paul Frummelt, and Mirza Krispahich, all Connection sports editors. We've talked a little bit about each of the districts. We want to get to the National District, a district that doesn't get a whole lot of play all the time because they've had some teams. Look, they had 3 teams that were 1-9 last year, folks. Let's be honest here. Mm-hmm. It's a district that's seen better days, but they still got some schools there up at the top. Before we get to that, we want to post, of course, our impossible trivia question for this district. We want to ask you folks at home if you know, and ask each other there, who or when was the last time that Edison won a state title in football? A question for the ages, my friends. Do we know the answer?
Indeed.
That is the most impossible of the impossible questions you've asked me, sir. I have no clue.
And like Mirza said, a question for the ages because it's been ages. 1986 was the last time that a national district team won a state title in football, Edison being that national district team. They defeated Warwick by a score of 7-6. It was the school's only AAA state football title. So Edison, about 20 years ago, won a state title in Division 5. Could they do that this year in that division. They were close last year, guys. They really gave Valley a run there in the playoffs, and I think they could have possibly gotten Stonebridge. So Edison, a team that, like you said earlier, was a tough team that Coach Lewis talked down at the beginning. Are they a team that you think has a shot, Mirza?
I'm sorry to be correcting you, BJ. Just real quick, they did beat Loudoun Valley in the region semifinals last year. Valley beat them in the regular season. I apologize, but
Okay.
Stonebridge did get him, and they gave him a very good run in the
Right.
regional final, and it was a close game, closely contested game. And Stonebridge, of course, went on to win that state title. But Edison, Coach Lewis really gave me, a little bit of a wrong answers when I was talking to him for the preseason preview, and he really talked them down. And when you go out and see them, they have an unbelievable group of players. And as we were talking about Robinson last week being not a team but a program, I believe that's what Coach Lewis has done over at Edison now in his 9th year over there. They've graduated an incredible amount of seniors last year. Over the last 2 years, they've had 17, 18 seniors on the roster. This year, they have 8. And then they come out against a good lead team, and they beat them 27-22 for a couple of reasons. A great quarterback in Sean Lloyd with a great strength in his arm, ability to see the game, ability to run when he needs to. Then they had a running back come on, and Carter, who, replacing a very good running back from last year. Everybody was asking questions. Can he, being a lot smaller than last year's running back, can he make up for that? And he definitely did. He answered with 125 or so yards in the game. And then Ben Barber at wide receiver, 7 catches for about 140 yards, 2 touchdowns. Played a hand in each of the touchdowns, catching some major catches, including a 3rd and 18 situation, 44-yard touchdown catch, where that basically broke the game against Lee. So they have player makers, they have leadership in Sean Lloyd and other seniors, and a defense that forced 5 turnovers from Lee.
So Edison most likely being the cream of the crop in that district, but you've got some other guys that really are going to make a statement for themselves. Loudoun Valley's a team, like you mentioned, they did beat them last year, but Valley's a team that could make a little bit of a ruckus in there before they're moved out of that district, and also Yorktown, a team that's also got some players that could make an impact in that district.
Right, you never want to count out Yorktown, and it's a tradition football team, and they've been around for a long time, and very rarely has there been a losing season in that program. As far as Loudoun Valley goes, we talked about them earlier, being a big school, having a good team. And last year they split it with Edison. They beat Edison in a regular season match and then losing to them in the playoffs. So.
Well, Stonebridge has proved that Loudoun teams. I mean, I cover Loudoun for the Connection newspapers. Unfortunately, we don't talk about it here, but for Stonebridge, they've proved that Loudoun teams are quite good at football, and Loudoun Valley also shows that.
Absolutely, folks. We want to know what you think, okay? We want you to tell us what you think about the Northern Region and who's the top dog in this Northern Region and playoff bound. If you go to our website at www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com, you can find an email there for us, and you can let us know what you think about some of our predictions, some of our previews, and get a chance to interact with us and show us what you think about the future of this region this season. So we've really covered a lot tonight, guys. Let's recap a little bit of what we got a chance to look at. Obviously, if you stay tuned with us throughout the next couple of weeks, we'll get a chance to show you a lot more of the Madden-style preview that we went through between Oakton and Madison, Fairfax Sports Network's Game of the Week this week. You'll have to stay tuned for that. But we also covered some of the top dogs in each district. Real quick, let's get a couple of predictions before we sign off here. Top dog for you, Mirza, in the Concord district. Who do you think is going to take it all the way this year?
Yeah, like I said last week, I hate to bet against Robinson, but since I'm not betting on this one, I think I'm going to go with Centerville this year. I think they proved themselves in the first week, in the first half of the first week's game, and I think they're the team to beat. But you never know. Concord, a smaller team could come in and knock them off, or it could be one of the top 5 teams that we always talk about, and including Robinson themselves. But for what it's worth, Centerville.
Paul, I'm sure you're going to say Centerville.
Well, Van Chu, Brandon Davis, and that wide receiver core are the real deal.
Right.
Centerville all the way.
Well, guys, I said it last week, and I'm going to keep saying it until they prove me wrong. But I've had a lot of good things to say about Herndon, and I really believe that Herndon's shot is this year. I truly believe that those Hornets, who are ranked up there in our top 10. I'd like to get a chance to put that top 10 back up on the screen before we get going here off of our Fairfax Sports Report. I'd like to get a chance to show you that Herndon is definitely still up there, still ranked on our top 10. There at number 3, folks. You can also find this at connectionnewspapers.com. Centerville there at the top. You see Stonebridge at number 2. Herndon, West Springfield, Robinson, Westfield. Hey, there's a Liberty District team. You don't see that too often. Madison there at number 7, and we'll see how they prove themselves this week if they're a formidable opponent against an Oakton. Obviously, Annandale dropped after the loss, but they're going to do well in that district. The Patriot District champions from last year will be back. So we've got a whole lot of coverage here for you every week. Join us every week here on the Fairfax Sports Network. You can also see the FSN Game of the Week weekly. You can check the availability on Cox Digital Cable on Demand, where you can basically just go in and find these games that have already been recorded, and you can pull them up and watch them at any time on your digital cable there on Cox. Oakton at Madison, the Outback Bowl, coming up this Friday, and then you've got your Langley at Jefferson, Woodson at Marshall, Herndon at Robinson, and Oakton at Centerville, folks, here on the Fairfax Sports Network. Also, watch games from the last 20 years, guys, 20 years of coverage. Congratulations to the Fairfax Sports Network. You can see them on FSN Classic, Saturdays at 4:30 p.m. and Mondays at 3:30 on Cox, Comcast, and Verizon, Channel 10. Hey, we're on the web, guys, like we mentioned. Tell us how you feel about us. Go to the website, www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com, and email us your thoughts. CCI Screen Printing, 703-978-0257. Thank you for all that you do. Quality Care Ford Service Center, 703-383-6299. Hey, Blow Pucks and 10-cent beer keeps me laughing, guys, and it's also a very serious book at times, depending on which one of the 100 and worst sports ideas you're reading from Connection sports editor Greg Wyszynski's book out there on racks in a local bookstore.
Still haven't received a copy. By the way, you did a great job, BJ, in Greg's absence.
Hey, Greg's going to be back next week, so you won't have to put up with me anymore, I promise you. Hey, thanks for joining us, guys. Come on back every week and join us for weeks and weeks of high school football and other sports that we'll be feeding you weekly.
What about
That
that?
Madden thing was really cool, man.
Crispin
I wish
Hitch.
we had that when I was in high school, playing FIFA like that.
Chris Pahitch.
How about your Giants going against Peyton?